Good. Morning all. Good to see some familiar faces and some not so familiar ones. So I'm Jeremy Evans, I'm the Managing Director of Marketing Delivery, and I'm delighted that Anita from Facebook has joined me today. Anita is Head of Automotive at Facebook, or Meta now.
Yes.
Yeah, and is going to join in the conversation a bit later on with some insight from what's going on in the world of Facebook, Instagram, and all of that. So I'll kick things off and just rewind back to a time pre-pandemic. In 2019, where we were last in the NEC, we were last talking about all things CRM and social media. And we talked about the various touch points in social media and CRM in a dealership. And in those days, nobody could have thought that 2 years on, the most popularly used phrase in business would be, "You're on mute." But it is what it is. We are where we are. And when we looked at those touch points, we looked at how important it was to look at contact plans in dealerships, how social media blended in with those contact plans, so that we could make sure we did everything we could with our customers in the dealerships to get them over the line in good time. And we had time on our side those days. 2 years ago, the average inquiry to sale days was 16 days. So that was plenty of time for customers to work out what they needed, for sales executives and dealership staff to work out what the customer could afford, what would be right for them, and how to get them into the right car at the right time. Since then, things have changed. When customers couldn't visit dealerships anymore, they took to online to carry out their research. And they found that there was loads of stuff out there they could find out about their cars. And that despite the fact that dealers were closed and they couldn't go and see them, they could find out an awful lot about what was going on in the dealerships, with the cars, with the vehicles, with the manufacturers. So what's happened now? Well, the customer is still coming into dealerships to transact for their car, but they're a lot further along the cycle than they were 2 years ago. The inquiries come later in the process, so the pre-inquiry phase now is more important than ever, because there are now only 6 days between inquiry and sale. The customer is far better informed, has a far better idea of what they want, what they can afford, and when they should be getting it. And if you can't get your name in front of that customer while they're in that pre-inquiry phase, and if you can't deal with that customer effectively when they're in with you and quickly when they're with you, you might find that the customer is ready to transact and you're not. So I'm delighted that the next person who appears on this slide is actually in the auditorium today, so he can tell you that what I'm about to say he said is true. Cambria were early adopters of our eCRM and social media advertising programs and have worked hard on their data to get the most out of the opportunities. And the same basic contact plans are in place across that business, whether it's a Bentley, Lamborghini, Rolls-Royce dealership, or a Ford dealership, or a Vauxhall dealership. And Ian says here that during the lockdowns, the ability to use their data to keep in touch with their guests was absolutely critical to them. An ever-changing landscape of what was going on in the media, to be able to communicate clearly to their guests through accurate data was worth its weight in gold. The Sandown Group, long-term clients of ours, and have the most accurate dealer database in the Mercedes-Benz network. Keith there, again, talks about the fact that that accurate data has enabled them to keep in touch with their customers like never before. And customers are changing. In some of the studies that we've looked at and commissioned ourselves, we've seen that there's been a fundamental shift in how some groups of customers have changed how they view cars. So in metropolitan areas and amongst younger people where ride sharing and car sharing was a thing that was really in a massive growth phase pre-pandemic, these people are now looking at cars to buy themselves. They don't want to share cars with other people. They don't want to share rides. They're looking at cars themselves. And in the younger demographics where we saw driving test rates falling pre-pandemic, driving test rates are now through the roof. More younger people than ever are wanting to drive cars and are looking for cars. So dealerships have various ways of getting in touch with these customers and putting them in front of that inquiry, so the pre-inquiry phase that I'm talking about today. So we're going to break it down into 2 areas. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the kind of CRM area, how to mine dealer data to keep in touch with people who may be ready to change. And then Anita's going to talk a little bit about what we can do through social media, through the Facebook platforms, to get in front of people as well. and then I'll wrap up with some real-life examples of the work that we're doing with dealers so you can see what it looks like in the real world. So the touch points of the customer journey are different due to the amount of time consumers are spending online and adopting to carrying out their research online rather than coming into dealerships. So dealer data is there to look at when people bought cars and when they're likely to be buying again, when you're expecting them into the dealership in a service cycle. So you've got if your data's accurate, you've got a vast amount of information to go at there to put yourself in front of customers either before they start looking, as they start looking, but more importantly, before they start inquiring, because you want them to inquire with you, not with somebody else. So using your data for some of the examples that we've got here, is it time for a change? So somebody who bought a car 2 or 3 years ago, somebody that's been in for a service, putting your used car stock in front of them so they can see what else is around if they're thinking of a change, and simply, we want your car. Probably the most popular campaign we've run for dealers in the last 6 months is we want your car because of the shortage of used car stock. If you're buying a car off them, that's going to put them into another car as well. So managing the inquiry quickly and efficiently is more important than ever. We saw that the time now between inquiry and sale is only 6 days, whereas it was 16 days a couple of years ago. So if you're not following that customer inquiry up quickly and consistently, you will lose that customer from your inquiry cycle. Now, your sales executives are the best people to do this. However, in the digital world, automation and systems and platforms that can automate some of that contact for you and help triage the digital inquiries that are coming in are vital to get through to the people that are ready to convert within that 6-day period. Customers say that if a dealership doesn't get back in touch with them, doesn't respond, they'll go elsewhere. This is not rocket science. I've been saying this at these events for probably 10 years. Okay? Keeping in touch with that customer, taking that inquiry seriously has always been important. It's just more important than ever now. Our survey said, no surprises. If they contacted a dealership about a car they had seen advertised, 59% would likely stay in touch with that dealer if they received email alerts with other vehicles that come into stock or change in price. Again, this needs to be automated. We have a client around somewhere who I can't see at the moment who used to have hair. Okay? Then he started trying to keep customers in touch about stock changes himself. He's now bald. Okay? We automated that process for him, and his customers now get these updates and keep in touch with the dealership, and he doesn't have to go chasing around after salesmen to say, have you gone back to this customer about this vehicle? One of our other clients who's in the room, whose face is going to pop up on the screen in a minute, so again, he can vouch that we're not making this stuff up. The Sinclair Group down in South Wales, thank you, Dean, stood at the back there. The guys down in South Wales had their challenges during the pandemic, as not just the national lockdowns, but the local lockdowns in Wales were different from the lockdowns in England. And they used their social media activity, both in organic content and ads, to keep themselves in touch with the customers when they physically couldn't through the dealerships themselves. And consumers like it, okay? Big brother, whatever you want to call it, consumers like being kept in touch with the things that are of interest to them, that are relevant to them. I've spoken at these events for many years about relevance in email marketing. It's just the same in social media. If it's relevant to that customer because that's what they're looking for, that's where they're at in their journey, they will interact. Okay. So I'm delighted now to be able to hand over to Anita, who's going to take you through some of the insight from Facebook, and then I'll wrap up the end with some real-life dealer examples of the work that we've been doing. So, Anita.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Quick show of hands then. So we have rebranded in the last week. I'm sure you can't have failed to notice the news headlines. And Meta is now the overarching company that looks after Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, Oculus, and clearly we're talking about a future of the metaverse. Thank you so much for everyone that's come to join us today. I just want a quick show of hands. How many people have used one of those platforms since waking up this morning? Okay, that might explain why there's so many people here today. I'm thrilled because Jeremy's invited me to share with you some trends and insights that we've been following since the pandemic. And I know the question is how many of these trends are here to stay. So I've got some data that you might not have seen before that I'd love to share with you. And I think, this fundamental question about have people changed? Well, definitely people haven't changed. The way we make decisions is still exactly the same. The thing that has really shifted, though, is how we reach those people and how we influence their decisions. To obviously, we're all in the game of selling here, so how do we influence people to make purchases? And that has shifted. So I'm going to show you some data on media consumption, first of all. What I'm also going to talk to you about is 3 key shifts that we're seeing, and that's the ability to be evergreen in your marketing, the power of machine learning, and I'll explain a little bit of that, and then how friction is being removed out of every purchase consideration, how it's becoming easier and easier to go from being inspired and discovering new products to clicking and buying them. And that's a trend that isn't going away either. So I'm going to start with this data. And the way to read it is on the top left axis is the reach of all adults in the UK. So what percentage of all adults can be reached by each media channel? And across the bottom is how many minutes per day they spend in that media channel. And this was the picture back in 2014. Now things are going to move, so just watch carefully and I'll just talk you through some of these big shifts. So the first thing you'll notice is print and magazines have seriously declined. There's about 9 million people fewer reading magazines and print. So that's the equivalent of the whole of London stopping picking up a newspaper in a week. Commercial radio has pretty much remained intact, but what we've seen is a massive rise in Spotify. So people subscribing to music streaming platforms has seen a huge increase. And then the other thing you'd have seen is commercial television dropping. Now there are about 8 million fewer adults watching commercial television in a given week than there were 6 years ago. And that has been because of the rise of Netflix and significantly because of the rise of the mobile internet. But the mobile internet isn't equal. And people using the mobile internet, 59% of them are spending their time on the Facebook and the Instagram app. So if you want to find people where they are consuming media today, you're going to find them on their mobile devices. So when we talk about this shift to digital, what we really mean is a device that most of you have either got stuck in your pocket or you're working multitasking on right now. And that is what's happening. People are multitasking, multi-screening all the time. We're doing multiple things at once. So I've mentioned that Facebook has become one of the biggest growing and the largest reach media platforms now in the UK. You can see it's ahead of some of the commercial TV channels that you once would have thought would have been the way to reach mass audiences. And we're obviously significantly bigger than our friends at YouTube. Now let's just put into context the fact that social media is democratizing the way you can reach people. So once upon a time we'd have talked about the advertising break in X Factor being the place where you reached everybody. A generation before that was Coronation Street. You know, if you wanted to reach the mass UK audience, you advertised in Coronation Street. But that was only for the very, very big marketeers, the marketeers with like the deepest marketing budgets. If we think about that interview that happened this year, and I'm sure you all know which one I'm talking about, at its peak there were about 12.3 million people that tuned into it. And if you would have wanted to have advertised in one of those breaks, it would have cost an advertiser £120,000 to reach 12 million people. Now, when I say Facebook's democratising the ability for companies to advertise to mass audiences, it's worth bearing in mind that to reach that many people on Facebook would have cost you £36,000, which is 70% cheaper. So democratisation means, okay, most people in this room won't want to reach 12 million people, but the ability to reach people at scale, there are 40 million people in the UK on Facebook every single month. And the fact that if you're a brand that wants presence throughout the year, you can afford to have an evergreen presence now. It's changing the way you can get in front of people and be present and create awareness. Now, the second shift that I want to talk about is the way that people are fundamentally shopping. We know that digital has had a mass transformation of the way that we do things, just because of necessity through lockdown and COVID. And I won't mention all the different things that we now do digitally. But I think, classic example is traditional things that we would have gone and done in person are changing. We're still doing them in person, but when I go to a restaurant now, very often there's a menu on the table and a QR code, and I've pre-ordered my food, and actually the serving team are there to clear my plates, bring my food to me, and make the experience as pleasurable as possible. So we are digitising existing processes. We're making them convenient. We're taking human error out of the process. And in a lot of instances, it's changing the way the cost structure of businesses can operate. So we like to think of this as once upon a time, you went shopping, you got out of your house and you physically went and drove somewhere or got on a bus to drive to go shopping. or you typed into a search engine something you were looking for, and that is shifting to discovery commerce. And I think you're going to hear this term increasingly in months and years to come, because products now find people. Any of you that have been on your Facebook platform today, scroll through your feed, no doubt most of you have seen adverts delivered to you. And depending on what you've been doing in the last week, those adverts are now highly, highly personalised. So if I'm looking for gym wear, I'm going to see lots of new leggings that I never knew were brands that delivered leggings. I bought a duvet from a company, an actual duvet from a company this week, and it wasn't the white company for the first time in many years, because they know I'm looking for duvet, and suddenly I found new brands that are digital only, that are getting in front of me and catching my attention. But the difference is we're going from seeing an ad, which we've always seen influenced by advertising. It works for many, many years. We watch TV adverts and we think, maybe next time in the store, I'll look at that. But now we're actioning it immediately. We're going from click to buy, and that friction is getting removed. And this data just from outside of the industry, outside of automotive, is showing how fast those expectations are changing. You can see from fashion, food, personal care, electronics, the discovery is happening online. People are finding new products because products are coming to them digitally online in their news feeds. And actually, for automotive, it's also really significant. 87% of car buyers in Europe are discovering new models online. And you think about the new brands that are emerging that no one had ever heard of before. We've got Lucid coming and we've got Genesis coming in. These are brands that no one would have heard of before, and their awareness is happening through digital channels. So I'm going to rattle through a few stats. I know the whole topic here today is digital, so I'm sure you've seen many numbers like this already today. But people are doing most of their research online. That is a given now. These numbers might change from presentation to presentation, but I think the two things to remember are people are starting their digital journey online, but at any given time, only 4% of people are in market. So what you need is a platform that's able to find you mass reach and tell people a very broad awareness message, but then get very niche and targeted when you want to start talking to people about offers and transactions and converting into leads when they're in market. And this is where I want to talk about the power of machine learning. So media plans, again, I've worked in OEMs, I've worked for Volvo, Jaguar, Land Rover, I've had a marketing budget, and most of my money goes around when I've got my brand new car launch, and then the rest of my budget fizzles out because I just can't be present the whole year round, and I cannot support the entire model lineup of 20, 30 vehicles that I've got to talk about. That's been a marketing problem forever. The thing with people is they're coming into market for loads of different reasons, loads of different times. It's not just the end of a PCP agreement. And the power of a social platform is the machine learning and the algorithm, because all of you out there are searching for things, looking at things, spending longer on an advert than something else, going to websites where there are cookie trails and signals being left. So the machine learning knows exactly what you're doing before the marketing team does. And what I'm asking you to do is trust the machine learning. Give the platform a brief. I want to find someone that clicks on my ad. I want to find someone that books a test drive. I want to find someone that's in my used car site and putting down a reservation. And the machine will just find more and more people that are doing that action. So forget CRM as you knew it, which was I've got to find the smallest audience possible, and now go broad. And you'll hear that from many of the marketing agencies you go to now. They'll be telling you to trust the machine learning and trust opening up the audience to broad, giving the machine a very specific action, book a test drive, click on an ad, check out on a store, and it will find those people for you. And then the third trend is word of mouth. And a platform like Facebook is all about communities. It's all about the groups. It's back to the old-fashioned word of mouth, the advocates, the customers, the fan bases. People trust people. Car buyers trust their friends and people that are already driving the car more than they do a website, more than they do a retailer, because it's just human instinct. And that's not to say there's a place for all of that in the marketing mix, but don't underestimate the power of friends and family and the word of mouth. So people are looking for trust reviews, they're looking for experiences, they're looking for the good experiences, and they're also looking to weigh up the bad experiences. But we can see that Facebook is a really strong source of that point of truth in terms of what are people saying about the brand they're looking to buy from. And that's the importance of your own dealer webpage, your own dealer Facebook pages. 40% of people buying a car will go to your dealership page on Facebook to check out what other people are saying about you. 45% to get a feel for the dealership, 42% to see what others are saying about you, and actually 28% of people use it now as the vehicle to actually communicate. So they want to click on the messenger button and chat to you. They want to use the WhatsApp functionality and message you. And these messages are persistent, so it's a great way to keep in touch with someone. Maybe over time, you don't want to expect them to convert immediately, but make sure you're building up relationships with the people that are trying to communicate to you through your Facebook page. And then the final thing I want to leave you with is test. You don't have to believe anything I've said today, but all I want you to do is just test it. And this is where the team at Marketing Delivery will really help you, because these are new concepts. We're trying to unlearn what we knew before and shift with new consumer behaviours. So just A/B test every campaign you do. What we know is, just click someone, 45% of companies that have a testing plan, a 45% increase in performance for companies that have a testing plan, but only 4% of automotive brands test, which is crazy. Why do we think we know what our marketing pound is doing and do what we've always done when we're seeing so much shift in consumer behaviour? So I'm just going to frame the three things I've taught you. Reach and scale. Platforms like social media can democratise the way you reach mass audiences. And there's discovery commerce. Remember that phrase, discovery commerce. Consideration. The machine learning will find the right people for the job you want it to do. So if you want to tell 40 million people about your brand, you can do that. But if you want to start getting tactical by specific model, by specific offer, by servicing versus new car versus used car, the machine learning will find those people. So trust in machine learning. It's the new way forward for CRM. And finally, friction-free future. Click of an advert through to action on your website or even transact in social. Digital commerce is here to stay. It's not taking away from the retail experience, but it's complementing it. And the less friction you can have in a process, and the more you can make that friction-free, the better. So I'm going to thank you for your time. I'm going to pass back to Jeremy, and he's going to show you through some of the real examples of the work he's doing with his clients. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. So as Anita says, we're going to look at what this looks like in the real dealer world now. So this is not just where big brands come in and spend their big marketing budgets. This is where you as dealers can come in. The client dealers that are in the room will know the phrase, fail fast. So try something. If it works, great. If it doesn't, switch it off, move to something else. Okay, so we're going to show you some examples of what that looks like. This one should play a video. Mr. AV man, don't know how that does it. That Porsche one should be a video. Can we get that to play? Here we go. The ability to include videos, stock, buttons, links to your website, keeps audience engaged with the ads across Facebook. They're in a platform that they know, they like, they spend an awful lot of time on and trust. They don't necessarily want to go off to your website at the first opportunity. They want to engage with the content, look at your stock, look at your offers within the trusted environment of Facebook or Instagram or the connected wider audiences. The Facebook AI, as Anita has said, will enable you to find valuable in-market customers in that pre-inquiry phase that I've spoken about today. Whether it's new cars, used cars, after sales, we're running campaigns for dealers across all of those, looking for people who are in that pre-inquiry stage. Backing up what's going out by email and ECRM from the dealership and from the manufacturer with targeted activity that says, find me people who are going to be interested in my brand and are going to interact with my brand and are likely to click, are likely to want to take a test drive, are likely to want to come and talk to me about this vehicle. We can try and second guess that all we want. The likelihood of getting all those nuances just right to find the exact right people for you without the machine learning there, it's going to be really difficult, okay? So the algorithms are there, the machine learning is there to find those people and bring them to your ads and then to your dealerships, to your businesses. Different formats, instant experiences, carousels. They allow stock information from your vehicles to build catalogs and put your vehicles in front of people who are visiting your website, who are visiting other people's websites who are similar to yours, who are looking at content in the wider web world, and put your stock and your offers, your vehicles in front of them. And it's not just about what happens to these people, where do these leads go? They see an ad, great, they click, what happens next? Do we know where they go? You can generate ads from this where the customer doesn't have to fill in a separate form, fill in all their details again. They can use the information Facebook's already got to send a lead gen straight into your dealership. And we've got software, other people here have got software today, they can take those leads and pump them straight into you, either as an email alert or into a lead aggregator platform. Those leads can be with you in real time so that you can follow up on those customers instantly. I think Alistair at the See It Now presentation this morning was talking about the speed of response to leads and getting in front of people and within an hour of that response coming. Well, the tools are there to do that from your Facebook ads, okay? It's not just the preserve of big brands and branding positions, it is retail, okay? And it is retail for anyone that wants to do it now. You can turn this stuff on tomorrow. So where I showed you the video earlier of emails being sent through with change in used car stock, exactly the same happens with these ads, okay? The used car stock that gets used for the emails also gets used to power the catalogues that put stock in front. When your stock changes, your ads change. When your prices change, prices in your ads change, okay? When people are on your website, if you have the pixel installed, we can see what they're looking at and make sure the relevant stock is put in front of them, okay? So this stuff is all there, the software exists for it, and it really is a way of saying, we can use this channel to get in front of the inquiry to make sure people who are looking, who haven't raised their hand or their head with our dealership yet, we can get your stock in front of them. You can get your stock in front of them. So in summary, that inquiry to sales period has changed from 16 days to 6 days now. So the pre-inquiry, CRM and social engagement is more important than ever. Data mining your own data for email and SMS campaigns is important. And the automotive inventory ads, I can never say that properly, we call them social stock ads because it's easy to say, gets your stock in front of people when they're searching on Facebook and Instagram. Okay, so that's it from us. If you have any questions, I don't know how we're doing for time, we've got a couple of minutes left. We can either take questions from the floor now, or we're happy to take questions over on the stand over at the back of the room a bit later. So anybody wants to fire anything at us in the couple of minutes we've got left, go ahead.